Hello, can people hear me? Hello? Can people hear me? Okay, thanks. I'm going to wait just a couple minutes to see if other people come online. Thanks, Daniel. Great.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is I just have a little sort of short slideshow presentation. This is actually sort of the slideshow presentation that I give when I give a talk, which is just about the motivation for data carpentry, which is pretty similar to motivation for software carpentry, but is really sort of stemming from this sort of big data deluge that we're seeing in almost all domains of research right now. So I'm going to share my screen and go through that, talk a little bit about sort of, where you can find information on data carpentry, what our lessons are, and then basically answer any questions that you have about the program, about being an instructor. And I know we have some other people who've taught data carpentry on the line right now, so they can answer in the chat or whatever too. So first I will go and share my screen. Maybe. There it is. Okay. 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 So our goal is like software carpentry. So it's training to enable more effective and reproducible research. And the motivation for this is that data is increasing in volume, velocity, and variety. So this is sort of the big data 3V. There's another V too that I don't remember what it is. But that we're getting all of this data now sort of coming into a research environment. The one we usually think about is sort of this volume, but we're also getting a lot of variety, so different types of data, not unstructured like text data, even genomic data is sort of unstructured data, and velocity, a lot of cases too. We're seeing real-time data coming in. This is a case, a lot of business applications, but we're gonna start to see this too from things like GIS data, any kind of real-time measurement systems. So we have a lot of data now that we have to deal with. And this large-scale data is being generated in all domains of research now. So genomics, satellite data, digital text. So it's very pervasive, these large amounts of data. And this is true in the academic sector as well as in the non-academic sector. So our target audience is still the academic group. But these are the kinds of skills that will translate from research into an industry type a situation if people are looking to sort of expand their skill sets to ones that will be useful in a lot of contexts. And so with the emergence of these new technologies that are generating these large data sets, this data analysis, software development, it's no longer the domain of specialists, and it needs to be done by all researchers. And before we could kind of get away with, oh, it's the person over there that does our data analysis and, I do all the lab work or I do the field work. But it's just not the case anymore that you could sort of partition these roles off. It's really that for a researcher to really sort of feel empowered to do their own analysis, to be able to work with in their project start to finish, that they need to have these skills. And this is a picture of our first data carpentry workshop. And the reason for that, right, is that all this data that we're generating, it's data potential, right? just sitting there, it's nothing. It's not information, it's not knowledge. And so what we need to do, so the training is really a missing piece between this data collection and this data potential and discovery and research projects. So this data-driven discovery. And so, and it's not just, us, making this up or me making it up, that there's this demand and this need. Researchers view the major limiting factor in research progress as a lack of expertise in how to handle and analyze data. So this was a survey done by the Bioinformatics Resource Australia. And so the biggest bioinformatics difficulty you can see here is expertise and training. And the most useful thing that this network could do is offer training. And that's above funding or compute, which is where a lot of the focus often is. So by far and away, people recognize that they want this training, they need this training. And so we're trying to help fill that training gap. And so our mission is to provide researchers high quality domain specific training covering the full life cycle of data-driven research. So we teach hands-on workshops in data organization, management, and analysis to increase data literacy and improve this research efficiency. And so we're teaching the basic concept, skills, and tools for working more effectively with data. And what this means when it says sort of these basic concepts, what we're trying to teach are the foundational skills that will let people do sort of the more specific things in their field. So we actually are working when we're developing lessons to identify what those core skills are. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the specific lessons. And workshops are designed for people with little to no prior computational experience. So part of the reason that data carpentry has emerged is because software carpentry was seeing so many sort of novice users coming to the workshops. And so it really was being recognized as an audience that needed sort of particular lessons. And they had not only sort of a different level of experience, but a little bit of a different focus in terms of what they wanted to get out of these research skills. Whoops, sorry. Is things working? Is that what someone's trying to say to me? So we are going for that audience. So here's some lessons. So when I talk about we, this is the Data Carpentry Steering Committee. It's Karen Cranston, Homar Lapp, Alexander Pawlik, Karthik Rand, Ethan White, Greg Wilson. And so our steering committee are basically all co-founders of Data Carpentry. This came out of an NSF BioCenters meeting where we saw this need for training in this space of sort of domain users. Oh, someone's calling me. Oh, the slide is not advancing. Wait, okay, I'm gonna not. Oh no, none of my slides advanced. All right, I just stopped screen sharing. They just said, oh, none of your slides advanced. It all made sense without the slides, right? Okay, I'll put the slides up on SlideShare so you can see the slides. But you didn't really need them. They were just pictures and words. So let me go over to the Etherpad though and see what I missed where everyone was yelling at me. No, I was not advancing the slides. Okay, so that's sort of the overview of why data carpentry developed in the audience that we're trying to reach. And so our lessons, everything is developed in the same way as software carpentry, in the sense that it's all collaboratively developed. It's all in GitHub. We use similar templating. Where things are different is that data carpentry, so our core ecology lessons, which are the ones that we started with, we teach data organization in spreadsheets, OpenRefine for data cleaning, R for data analysis and visualization, and SQL for data management. So you can see that in there, I did not mention Git and version control. And so we are not requiring our instructors necessarily to know Git either. So if everything is being developed on GitHub, we might limit our contributors to people who only know Git, but we're not requiring that of our instructors. So we are trying to think about other ways for people to contribute to lessons outside of Git. The other is that we're trying to have a very sort of easy technology stack in terms of working with the lessons. So sort of not going through Pandocs. So we're trying to sort of make the overhead, the technology stack overhead low on contributing, because our instructor pool is potentially a little bit different. In terms of being a data carpentry instructor, I think a lot of people saw that we had the post on the fast track data carpentry, which is that we just want to see who in the software carpentry community is interested in teaching data carpentry, and that they have some experience teaching and sort of an interest in this particular group, which are novices. And we know that's not everyone's interest in terms of the audience they want to work with. And so we just wanted to get a sense of that. So actually we already have 50 applications for certification. So we're really happy to see that. And we are really excited to see, you know, how software carpentry and data carpentry are working together. And also the instructor training program is essentially the same. If you've been through software carpentry training, you know that most of it's about the pedagogy, you know, hands-on teaching. That applies in both. We're going to just be add on a little bit extra that gives some familiarity with the data carpentry lessons and sort of our strategy for teaching. One other point that sort of differs is that our lessons are a narrative. So they use one data set throughout the workshop, start to finish. And that data set is related to the domain that we're teaching. And so it's to show that workflow from start to finish. Like you get your data, you clean it up, you bring it into R, you do some analysis, you do some visualization, you work with your data management in SQL. And so it's just slow. If you look at our lessons page, you'll see that those are the ones that are highlighted, the ecology one. And we also have the genomics workshop that we've developed and is actually in much better shape than it looks like in our GitHub repo, because it's distributed across many repositories right now. So once we get that together, that lesson actually looks very different than our ecology one, because we're talking to people who are working with next generation sequencing data. And so that lesson starts with project management. Then the next thing that we do is we SSH to an Amazon instance, where we're working at teach the command line and teach running bioinformatics tools at the command line, doing some automation of or some looping on how to run those bioinformatics tools at the command line, and then getting data off of Amazon, and then coming into R and working with R for that analysis and visualization. So when we talk about being domain specific, it's not only using a different data set, but teaching different tools and the things that are most relevant in that domain. We also just had a hackathon for working with spatial data, and that covers starting with, you know, understanding what spatial data types are, and then bringing the data into R. We started with R, we'll do Python as well, and working with that data in using the appropriate packages in that framework, and talking about producing maps and things. So again, not only is the data set different, but the actual skills being taught are different. So are there any particular questions? It is very weird to talk and like not know anything about the audience. So give me questions so I can pretend like you're there. I will, since there's no questions, maybe there will be. But another thing that I want to mention. Oh, good. Okay, Alexander is running DC in the UK. Yeah. So the question is, Alexandra running data carpentry in the UK. So she's on the steering committee for data carpentry. So she's kind of been taking the point there. But the SSI is organizing the workshops for data carpentry in the same way as they are for software carpentry. So Alexandra also kind of takes point on a lot of stuff for software carpentry in the UK. She's doing the same for data carpentry. Good. Okay. So someone says they just saw the blog post about the fast track. Can I talk about what the training is like for that? So there's not training per se for the fast track program. The fast track is that you fill out that form, and then, yeah, I know there's a lag. You fill out the form, and then we read the form, and then we say, you know, you look like you'll be a good data carpentry instructor, given that you have sort of some domain knowledge and an interest and ability to teach new users. And so that's sort of, we're looking at that application. Once we go through those, I imagine that most people will be fine. We're going to have some info sessions to familiarize people with the data carpentry materials and a little bit the format and answer some questions. So it's more talking about the logistics of a data carpentry workshop and than it is a specific training. As we go forward and we have the software carpentry trainer programs, we're just adding on a component for data carpentry. The requirement rather than a pull request, again, because we don't teach Git, is going to be that you develop an exercise for one of our lessons. So that will be the requirement once people go through the instructor training like they are now. Let me know if that doesn't answer your question, Daniel. Okay, so then John says, so I'm signed up to teach a data carpentry workshop in January. Any advice for actually running the event? I will talk to you, John. So far, I have been the one organizing all the workshops, and I've talked with all of the instructors before they taught and after they taught, most of the time. Sometimes I'm not very good at email. And so I've been very hands-on with all. So now, as like Manisha has started organizing the workshops, it's a little bit of a different model for me. But I still want to talk with people, especially for workshops in December and January before those workshops. So John, I will definitely be in touch, and we'll go through teaching that. But it's not in terms of, you know, actually running the event, what's different about it? It's not different. The thing is that you need to, because it is a narrative, there's a little bit of a sort of connector piece that isn't necessarily transcribed particularly well in the lessons. And then the other is just when you're doing the introduction, that you're making sure that you're really making it a really sort of friendly environment to these people that are sort of often intimidated by computational skills. And I said, you know, one of my sort of positive comments that I heard was that someone said, I usually run away screaming from these things, and I didn't this time. And, you know, that's the kind of thing we want to create, that environment where it's not intimidating, where people feel like they can do it and that they walk out of the workshop, you know, empowered rather than sort of disappointed or scared. So just creating that environment's important. Okay. So for those who wanted to help develop lessons after ecology and genomics, what's next? Humanities, social sciences for the win. Yes, so what's next? Next on the docket is social sciences and library probably are places where we're seeing the most interest and support right now. It seems like we'll be able to put together, so our model for developing new lessons is to do a hackathon. And so the hackathon is to get people together to not only write the lessons, but as I said, to identify those core skills, to talk about what that domain is and what the skills are that they need. And so we actually have conversations about that even before we get to the hackathon. And so that's the model. And for social sciences, we actually already had some work done at Berkeley where we talked about what those skills would look like for working with tabular data and with text data. And so we have people who are interested in hosting the hackathon. We just need to find the resources because we pay. So hackathons, we put out an application for people to come to the hackathon, and if people are accepted, then we pay for them to fly to the location and participate. So we cover all the travel costs. So the cost for developing those lessons is the money required to sort of fly everybody in. So funding is an important part. And so social sciences, we have a couple places who are interested in hosting and not committed resources yet, but we're working on it. Libraries, we're also working on. So we'll keep you posted. Blog posts, definitely, we'll post to the Software Carpentry discuss list. We also have a discussion forum. If you go to our website, it's not very well used, but that's also a place where we can, start an issue on something, and if you're following it, we'll post updates on there as well. One of the main differences, okay, so I'm signed up, good. Currently we have several different things. Oh, John's gonna offer a prize to the first person with an accidental error message. That's a good plan. I think that'll take like 10 minutes. And it would usually be, I'm usually the one that generates the error messages first. Yes, oh, Daniel, thank you. I saw that Etherpad with the list of people who want to contribute. So I will definitely be referring back to it. Oh, and you copy pasted it, perfect. The geospatial ones do still need some work. So it'd be great to have people who are interested in that. Maybe the other thing to point out is that I'm currently the executive director, and Manisha Sane is the program coordinator, like she is for Software Carpentry, and we are also going to be hiring an associate director, and we are putting up that post on Monday or Tuesday of next week. That associate director position is going to be really involved in working with a volunteer community and communications. So a lot of the great things I think that we've heard today with people with ideas, trying to help sort of integrate some of those ideas and interact with the community. So if you know someone who is interested in that position, or you yourself are interested, we definitely would encourage people to apply. So we're super excited to have more people on board to help with this and sort of grow our work in these different domains and with the community. Oh, the other thing is too that we don't currently have the same self-organized workshop model as Software Carpentry. So we, as a new organization, last year when we had our steering committee meeting, we decided not to sort of brand and support self-organized workshops because we had to be so involved in all of the workshops. There was still a cost to running those. We are continuing that policy through 2015. It's something that we're talking about in 2016. I know I was waiting, John, for stuff to come through. It's weird with the lag. So we have a different policy around self-organized workshops, at least through 2015. So any kind of data carpentry workshops still need to run through us through the workshop request form for now. So John says, currently we have several different tools in the biology curriculum, R, OpenFind, SQL, and spreadsheets. How many of these tools can be covered in a workshop? All of those are covered in a workshop right now. So the ecology workshop starts with spreadsheets and OpenRefine. That's the first module. And then the afternoon is the introduction to R. And then the next day is the continuation of R for the morning session, and then the afternoon session is SQL. And there's actually plenty of time to cover all of those things. We don't tend to run out of time. We're actually going to be adding a little bit more to the R curriculum because right now we don't cover loops, and we've decided that that's something that's important to cover. So we do actually cover all of those topics. The one that we don't cover, that we had tried to cover in the beginning in this lesson was the command line. We don't find that this audience is good motivation for using a command line as much as it's like my favorite subject and near and dear to my heart. So I was sad to let it go. But we are teaching it right in the genomics workshop. So it's going to depend on the audience whether we teach that or not. So there's another question that's being written. Building off the discussion in the roundtable discussion, software carpentry as university courses, is there a policy towards people want to fold data carpentry material into a course? No, please do put it in a course. So the only reason we're saying, you know, not self-organized is that you wouldn't like call it a data carpentry workshop. But if you want to use data carpentry material anywhere, you know, it's CCBY, please do use it in a course. And in particular, Ethan White, I think, as was mentioned, is developing a semester-long course, and he's designing it to be very modular so that people can take different exercises and use them in different contexts. He does say that the lessons don't make a lot of sense without a little bit more context. But if that is something that you're interested in and you're using them in your class, he's super excited about, you know, about the project and working with others. So I would definitely get in touch with him. But you are, of course, more than welcome to use the materials wherever you wanted as any part of any workshop you were teaching or whatever. The only thing is if you're calling it a data carpentry workshop, that's when we need to know about it. Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice if you told us you were using it in other places too, because it would make us happy. But also, you know, we do still do things like write grants to fund these efforts. So any kind of data that we have on use and reuse are really valuable for us for justifying the work that we put into developing these lessons and, you know, working with the community to develop them. Or, you know, that we can give credit to you that, you know, so-and-so is using this and go look at what they're doing with their cool course, right? So if you want to let us know, that's great, but you don't have to. So John, so it's like a software carpentry workshop then with Git, Bash, and R in one workshop. Right, Git, Bash, and R would be software carpentry. R, SQL, and spreadsheets would be data carpentry. Cam says, do we need Python install instructions added to the setup instructions? Yes. So I've been doing something with the setup instructions. Instead of like having the install instructions include Python, if there's no Python in the workshop, I actually kind of did a weird modular thing. And like, so there's a YAML header that like pulls in the appropriate stuff. But yes, if we don't have Python install instructions already, we definitely need them somewhere. So we haven't, to be honest, we've only taught the Python lessons a couple of times. So yeah, we're not as good about sort of the infrastructure around them right now. It's not, yeah, so it's Python super rare. It's been rare right now. I don't see it continuing to stay rare necessarily. There are certain locations that specifically want a Python workshop. I think that R is a little bit more in demand right now because it is sort of associated with this data analysis, which is our kind of perspective. But I think that Python is just as important. And the point about our Python lessons, just was talking with Matt Davis, who's in the other room, and Osley Bostrom, who are redeveloping the Python lessons for software carpentry. So the plan is to have a shared software carpentry, data carpentry sort of beginner Python lesson that is sort of data focused in the sense that it's going to be, you know, using pandas from the start. Oh, sorry. So John's question was like, oh, software carpentry covers 3 tools. Do you also cover multiple tools? And yes, we also cover multiple tools. And the reason we cover multiple tools is because we're trying to talk about that whole data workflow. And so that's not just one tool. That's right. Understanding how you need to organize your data so that it could be, you can bring it into something like R or SQL. It's getting your data clean enough to be able to use these tools, and it's being able to do your analysis, create visualizations, do data storage. So there's not one tool that can do all of those things, and so that's why we teach multiple tools. So someone says, what's the IP license for the material Creative Commons? Yeah, it's CC BY. So it's with attribution. So you can use it wherever you want. You just are supposed to say, you know, this is where it's from. Same as software carpentry. I'll keep moving so you won't think I'm frozen. Oh, good. Okay, so Daniel asks, what is OpenRefine and why use it over data cleaning in R and Python? Because OpenRefine is awesome. So OpenRefine is also known as Google Refine. And so it's a tool that is specifically, it's built for data cleaning, but what it's really good at is catching errors like spelling errors or resolving things like in a database where some people have written New York as NY and some as New York. And so what it does is it has clustering algorithms. And so that you can run clustering algorithms and then it'll show you, you know, all the words that look similar to each other, which in a lot of cases means that, you know, they're off by 1 spelling errors. And then you can tell it to correct those spelling errors. And what the correct version is. You can also set these sort of filters to say NY equals New York and make that change throughout the database, throughout your data set. And it produces JSON code, and so that you can track exactly what happened with that code. You can even reuse that code. Say if you have the same kind of data set that's coming in, you can just rerun that JSON code to redo that analysis. And so that's actually really hard problems in Python or R when you don't know what the errors are to try to catch them in that way. Also, Python, you know, R, they don't tend to have that sort of that sort of feedback where, you know, you can look at what they are and see what errors it's caught and what you want it to change and what you don't and what you want it to change it to. So it's sort of a way of sort of doing the algorithms, but then also having sort of the user oversight. And it's interesting because this isn't a tool that I really knew anything about before actually someone taught it in our first workshop. But it's actually one of the biggest hits in our workshops that people say it's changed their lives. And I use this quote a lot, but one of the a comment was, you know, I was so excited to learn about OpenRefine, and then I was so sad because I thought of all the hours I'd wasted doing it by hand. This is the kind of thing that people are doing in spreadsheets where they're like sorting and like looking for similarities and like changing things by hand. So any place where you have any kind of like user input data, it's a really useful tool. So I would actually encourage you to go look at our OpenRefine lessons and just kind of check it out if you have data that's relevant. But yeah, it's very cool. So it definitely has some advantages over R and Python in that space. John asks, on spreadsheets, how far should we go into software-specific tricks tips? Yeah, so that's a good question, and we actually are trying to stay a little bit away from software-specific tips and tricks in spreadsheets. So the idea of the spreadsheet lesson is to talk about data organization and how you should have one item per column, and you shouldn't use color coding to represent information, right? You know, like, oh, this data is bad, I'm going to color it yellow, right? And that is not something that would translate into R. Talking about you know, using null values and being consistent, right? And so in terms of using specific Excel functions, we have a little bit that talks about sort of data validation or conditional formatting. But it's pretty minimal in terms of the specific Excel functions. And that's primarily because we don't really want people using Excel. We know that's where they are right now, but what we're trying to teach is how to organize your data so that you can get out of Excel. And so, you know, say, look, if you're interested in learning how to work with spreadsheets better, you know, here's some books, fine, but that's not what we're teaching here. It's also pretty challenging actually to teach the specific Excel functions because they're really different in Windows and Mac. And so when you're up at the front of the room, you're only going to be able to represent one of those ways. So we have minimal sort of use of specific Excel functions in that lesson. And again, this is something though that it's really important as an instructor to not be mocking Excel, right? So, you know, as instructors, Excel is not something that we love. We have, you know, jokes about Clippy and things along those lines. But right, this is a tool that most researchers are using right now. And so we're not trying to say that they've been terrible people and are wrong. We're saying, you know, we understand that this is where you are, there are better ways of doing it, and, you know, we're going to show you how to work with it to enable all of these other things that you want to do with your data. So it's being, you know, sensitive to the current user workflow and not sort of denigrating what is being done, but just to say, you know, here's how we're going to sort of do it differently. So that's where it's important as an instructor to have that that kind of friendly perspective. I like the gently moving people away from Excel, like detoxing an addict. Yes, Daniel says, never mock, many cautionary tales. There are, and it's hard because actually, I mean, sometimes you're just trying to be funny, right? You're not actually mocking, you're just like making just kind of, you know, your geeky joke. But people are really sensitive to this because they kind of know that it's not optimal. So you have to be really sort of cautious in that module in particular. Yeah. I do try to have, you know, good jokes in each section. I really have the best jokes for the command line, so that's really why I want to continue to teach the command line. My SQL jokes are pretty limited. So if you have any SQL jokes, please put in a pull request for that lesson. So one thing that was interesting though is that I taught with someone, and you know, over time I think we all sort of develop our sort of ways of talking about things that represent those things without talking about them. Analogies, right? So we all develop our sort of analogies. You know, if you're talking about, you know, genomics and assembly, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and you take the pieces and you put them together, right? And so I think we all sort of develop our analogies, and those are especially helpful for beginners because it gives them sort of a context for learning these things that are not, you know, typed as commands. And so my co-instructor said, hey, could you put some of these analogies into the lessons, or at least have a list of them, you know, for people to refer to, you know, because if you're teaching it for the first time, you don't really know what the effective analogies are. So I really liked that idea. So I'm not quite sure how to incorporate them, but I thought it was a really interesting perspective because, I mean, I would love to see what kinds of analogies you have. And especially when my ones, they don't work, what would be better? And so I think that those analogies are particularly important for this community, and it'd be nice to sort of build up sort of a little portfolio of them. So John asks, any suggestions of learning objectives for a data carpentry type undergraduate course? Yeah. So I think for an undergraduate course, knowing how to think about data is really important, right? More so almost than the specific tools. So I have heard there's a couple people who teach undergraduates, Mine, and I can't pronounce her last name very well. She's at Duke. She teaches an undergraduate course, and they use the Netflix data set in their course and sort of use that as an example. So a little like Jenny Bryan was talking about, right off the bat, making those plots and really motivating things from sort of things being exciting and shiny. So Mine is motivating things by being, on that side. I know an undergraduate course here at UC Davis, someone started with having the students, he set up a survey and the students all took the survey, and it has a lot of spaces where, there's free text response where you could type the number 1 or type ONE, and then they use that data to then, clean up and analyze, which also was motivating for them. This is not answering your question, John. So if you're going to put together a proposal for a course, what would be the core competencies for working with data? And what would I say about the core competencies for undergraduates? I would say that one of the key core competencies is understanding about data and how it needs to be represented to be useful. Right, Tiffany Timbers, Tiffany Timbers, Jenny Bryan, Ethan's course that he's developing. So the question I think that came up maybe just here when we were talking about things is, the carpentry workshops, the people that we have come to them, motivation is very rarely an issue, right? They're there because they are frustrated by their current workflow and they want to do it better, right? We're not dragging them there because they have to be there, right? And so they're already motivated learners with some context for what's been hard and what they need to change. An undergraduate group doesn't necessarily have that same background. They haven't experienced the pain points. So you're introducing them to these concepts without them feeling the pain of having done it wrong. And so the question of how to sort of model what that would be is a little bit different. And I think, you can start, talking about provenance and data management and tracking workflows. I think all of those things are important. I'm not going to be able to articulate this very well right now. I'm definitely realizing. So the other person, though, who else is doing an undergraduate? Oh, Carl Budiger is also putting together an undergraduate curriculum. So Berkeley has started now an undergraduate curriculum in sort of data science, and they're doing kind of like this hub-based thing where they have kind of a vanilla intro and then these sort of other courses that build off of that. So he would be another person that would be really good to talk to about an undergraduate curriculum, because they've been putting some work into that. And I'd be very happy to be a part of that conversation. But yeah, maybe it is one that we should sort of broadly have with subsets of the community who are interested in that. But I do like Jenny's approach that is sort of more about data wrangling, because it is pretty much 80% of any project versus the sort of analysis, visualization, statistics, which is sort of the usual focus of a lot of these courses. But then people end up not being able to actually use that statistics because they never can get their data in a way that they could actually calculate those statistics. So. So John, I don't know, I think you might ping that on discuss list and then see if we can kind of get some kind of Etherpad or something going, at least with some discussion and pointers about that. Maybe we could set something up. What if we just set up a website that at least had sort of links to these different things that we've just been talking about? That would make a certain amount of sense. That would be actually maybe a good thing for a discussion forum topic, because it would be persistent and then we could refer to it and people could add to it. So maybe starting something like that would be a good idea. So John asks, how might a workshop differ based on the audience, i.e. grad students versus working researchers, i.e. grad students versus, well, grad students are working researchers. So the workshop differs based on the audience. I think it doesn't matter where in sort of the career stage people are actually. I mean, lots of times we have workshops that have faculty all the way, you know, advanced undergraduates through faculty in the same workshop. And if the career stage isn't so important, it's really sort of where they're coming from with their perspective on data. So the issue really is more around what their motivations are for being there, I think. And yeah, our focus is the working researchers and not the people who have, you know, never seen a data set before. But, you know, they could be there, and I think if they sort of were thinking ahead, that it would be just as effective. You know, our standard curriculum would be just as effective. Working as in, oh, academia versus industry. Well, so we have taught industry. So I actually taught one at Genentech about a month ago, and it was just the same, actually. There wasn't really a difference because it was the same thing. These were people that were working with data. Actually, their main pain point was that they wanted to start working with other departments within the company, and that they were finding that challenging because of the way different people had formatted their data and, you know, had metadata or didn't have metadata. And so actually the challenges in the perspective was very similar. So I think I'm maybe not, oh, so you're saying in a USDA workshop, would it be different? I actually don't think it would be different. Again, we've taught at the Federal Reserve Board, we've taught AAAS, we've taught companies, I mean, both software carpentry and data carpentry. So I actually don't think that in general, there's too much of a difference. It just really is that sort of, do I want to be here because this is things I'm working on, or am I here because someone made me go? I'm going to write down this idea for the discuss thing about the semester courses, John. So one other thing that we've been talking about, and this is a little off topic, so I have 10 minutes. Something else that we've been talking about with Leah Wasser at Neon is a lesson catalog to create basically like a GitHub place where people could submit links to lessons with information about that lesson. Like, this is a Python lesson for biologists and it's 2 hours long, and that they could submit that information with a link to the lesson. And then we would have a lesson catalog. So you could come to the catalog and you could say, I want a Python lesson, you know, for a semester long course in, you know, Portuguese. That's a little, you know, it's specific, but, and then it would pull up that list of those lessons, and then that you could go and, you know, look at all these lessons, because discoverability is a really big challenge, I think, in the lesson space. I think one of the reasons that data carpentry and software carpentry, sort of are successful and in terms of like being listed in the NSF guidelines around data management is because it's a place where you can go, right? Go to the software carpentry website and then look, there's lessons on stuff. It's not like Google lesson on Python, right? And so trying to increase the discoverability of lessons that aren't just, software carpentry or data carpentry, maybe are on more specific topics or are semester long oriented, is something that we thought might be interesting to people who are trying to integrate these kind of teaching strategies or materials into their curriculum. So yeah, if anyone has thoughts on that or interest in that, you can put it in the chat or email me, or because I think we're still trying to gauge like how useful that would be, and if there would need to be curation. And so there's sort of a lot to think about in terms of what would make a resource like that useful. You don't want to over-engineer, but you don't want to under-engineer. So that's something that we've been thinking about in the context of, some of the questions like you're asking, John, where can I find information about, people teaching in this way or teaching this topic? All right, well, if there aren't other questions or comments, I think I will close this up. And I guess am I the last? I think I'm the last one of the instructor retreat. And so I see John just added a question, so I'll answer that. So my suggestion, a web form for people to submit content that isn't just email so-and-so. Yes. Right, so it would have to be a link to content that would be available, and not necessarily on GitHub, but at least, like a PDF somewhere or something that was accessible, and not just like, yeah, talk to so-and-so about this. And I see, and maybe that's your point too about, what the web would be is like, don't talk to Jenny, but like link to, what it is that she was teaching. I think that's an important point. So yeah, and so the idea for this data catalog is that there would be some automation, at least, well, I mean, people would still have to enter things, so there would have to be some buy-in in terms of people wanting to put their resources into this catalog, but then it's it sort of would automatically generate pages and be searchable, so it wouldn't have to be a lot of oversight once it was sort of up and running. So we'll see. We'll keep you posted on that. So I think, are there plans to cover large-scale data analysis? Thank you. That's an excellent question. So I've just spent this whole time talking about introductory materials and teaching beginners, and but we got some funding from the Moore Foundation, and part of what they are interested in is this large-scale data? So like in astronomy. So I said, astronomers don't need data carpentry, they know what they're doing. Why would they want us? And the response was, right, exactly, they don't know how to work with the data they're getting now. Like, it was big before, but now it's like ridiculously big data. Maybe that's like a different category, right? Humongous data, I don't know. And so so actually they do specifically are very interested in us developing lessons for things like astronomers. So for sort of big data, like with Hadoop, in the cloud, that kind of stuff. Yes, that is on our radar, and will happen in the next couple of, maybe next year or so. So we're working with Matt at the Turk at the Illinois on the astronomy stuff. He's already thinking about that. We are still, in terms of you're saying, it's people talking about incorporating local HPC resources into lesson plans. That's right. The HPC resources into lesson plans, we're talking about that in the genomics, right? Because we're using the cloud. You can't possibly analyze genomic data on your own computers now. So you have to be using some kind of cloud resources or HPC. So that is actually by default incorporated into our genomics lessons. That isn't like Hadoop though, right? That's just basically using a bigger computer than the one you have in front of you. What the astronomy type lessons will be things like Hadoop parallelization, those kinds of things. And again, there'll be a process of identifying what those skills are. What is it that astronomers need right now to sort of level up to handle the kinds of data that they're coming through? Maybe those are specific tools used in the astronomy community. It's not clear what that will be, but that's on our radar as well. All right, so I think we've come to the end of this session. So thank you so much. These were great questions, and I really appreciated you guys all showing up at the end of the day. And if you do have further questions, feel free to send me an email, post things on the discussion forum, post them to the discuss list. We're really excited to be a part of the instructor retreat today, and it was great. And I think it was super exciting to get all this community together. So sounds like we'll be doing these kinds of things again, and maybe even some regional things came out of these as well. And I think that your site should be sending you a survey to fill out about your thoughts on this event. So if they have, please fill it out. If they haven't, maybe ask them for it. And thanks a lot, and we'll talk, I guess, again soon.